Hello and welcome to another of my talks looking at life from an older woman's point of view, mine actually, and I like to entitle this series of talks Forever Young. Well, now, did you know that there are 6 million women over the age of 65 living in the UK at this moment? And if you look at all the media, magazines, what have you, they're all geared to the other members of our 60 million strong population who are under 65. Now, this chat is for you, particularly if you remember hair being arranged in a ponytail, or when hairstyles like the Italian boy were all the rage, razor cuts replaced scissors, and you know what flick-ups, beehives and bouffants are. And if you were grown up enough to wear any of those by the time they were fashionable, as a child you might well have had to go to bed with your hair in rags. And for younger friends, these were strips of cloth, often cut from an old cotton sheet, about 3 inches long and 1 inch or so wide, that you had little sections of your hair wound around, instead of the small hard rubber or metal curlers that were standard home hairdressing equipment. Wearing them in bed was a pain, quite literally, and that's why the fashion was to have curls only round the edges of otherwise smooth hair. Or you may have been among the privileged few, the 350,000 in 1950, who were well off enough to buy a television before it became called a telly by millions, and when in that same year the daughter of the 17th Malcolm of Portellach, the clan chief and wife of 2nd Baronet Bartlett, Mary Malcolm, together with Margaret Lovell, presented a fashion programme for women called Your Wardrobe, that veered between showing their viewers expensive fur coats and post-war inexpensive austerity clothing. The possibly less aristocratic Margot Lovell went on to host a popular household hints programme called Hello, Come In, that was aimed at housewives, those women who, according to the Oxford Dictionary, are married women whose main occupation is caring for their family, managing household affairs and doing housework. And during those days, that according to the nostalgic hit song sung by Mary Hopkin in 1968, we thought would never end, the Postmaster General stipulated that TV could only broadcast between 9 in the morning until 11 at night, with not more than 2 hours of viewing before 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And with a nod at the mothers back then, there was what was known as the toddler's truce, when screens were blank between 6 and 7 p.m, so that you could get your children to go to bed without all the refusals and tantrums because they wanted to stay up to watch the next programme. That rumpus that countless parents have experienced since that really good idea was dropped in 1957. And by the way, there's a new technique to help with that old problem that a new generation of parents can utilise that might amuse you. It's to do with the new mindfulness stress-busting method that in this case advises you to stop trying to rush angry kids into bed, and furthermore advises you to try and enjoy the experience. Get down to the same level as your kids, they say. Listen more than talk, and savour any cuddles. If someone had said that to me at the time, I would have told them where to get off. Going back through our time tunnel to that different reality of the 50s, you could watch the one BBC channel for 8 hours on Saturday, and of the 7 3/4 broadcast on Sundays, of which the princely quota of 2 hours in the afternoon were aimed at adults, because it was assumed that any children would be at Sunday school. And just to remind you that also in 1957, the first Christmas message from the Queen was televised, Her Majesty having been given a How It's Done film made by BBC presenter Sylvia Peters, who had also introduced the coronation to an estimated 20 million watching in June 1953. And do you know that it was that single broadcast that created the mass production and sales of television sets we take for granted now? And rentals, yes. TVs could be rented weekly by poorer families, and it was a thriving high street business. Sylvia Peters, by the way, this doyen of broadcasting in the 50s, was one of the team presenting Channel 4's successful programme for the over 60s, years ahead, in the 1980s. But to return to 1957, the BBC was losing ground fast to the independent television stations. ITV had started 2 years before, and the first woman newsreader, Barbara Mandel, was appointed by ITN and read the news to us on the 23rd of September 1955. I loved ITV's American imports like cop drama Dragnet and sitcom I Love Lucy, but Hancock's Half Hour, part of the British Broadcasting Company's Fight Back, pulled plenty of viewers, including me. Well, who could resist feeling a certain sisterly affection, or dare I say it, empathy, for a man who admitted he'd tried every kind of bird from the Young Conservatives to the Biscuit Factory, and none of them had liked him, and who had thereafter enrolled himself in the Mayfair Charm School for Men? I think we all knew someone like him. Now, this was a statement that was clearly understood to mean that he'd approached girls he liked the look of, tried to engage in some conversation, and then asked them out on a date, and been turned down. And a social interaction commendable in a way too, as this script was written in a less mindful time when the casting couch was not only a given fact of showbiz life, but was remarked on generally without opprobrium. Nothing like the lecherous goings-on that we see in our present-day television shows, or the spate of fairly recent revelations conscientiously reported about certain high-profile businessmen in the field of entertainment and their expectations of sexual favours from applicants in return for giving them parts in films and on television. You'll have to excuse the dog. Neither would Tony Hancock's character have wolf-whistled or shouted disrespectful phrases at women in the street, the subject now reviewed and being debated for possible legislation here in the UK. And have you heard about this new mindfulness? The only mindfulness I knew about was the admonitions to mind your P's and Q's when in polite company. But this practice, based on ancient spiritual concepts, has been found to improve older people's general well-being. Now, people includes us women. And in a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, it concludes that elderly practitioners of mindfulness meditation and its cousin transcendental meditation experience improved longevity. They looked at a large group of seniors and found a huge decrease in mortality among those who meditated. An American National Institute of Health News in Health study states that it prevents cellular aging. And apparently findings are that meditation can also inhibit gene inflammation. There are, of course, other varieties of meditation that are not mentioned in these academic papers because they're linked to religions and religious practices. Mindfulness meditation works basically by you becoming aware of yourself and your surroundings in a contemplative way. Your focus is then on what's happening in the present rather than things that have happened in the past or might be going to happen in the future. I won't get into the whole rigmarole here, but like all meditation practices, you start by being somewhere quiet where you won't be disturbed for a few minutes, taking some deep breaths and focusing on your breathing. A couple of breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Then you concentrate on something in your immediate surroundings and let everyday thoughts wander past, whether worries, anxieties, fears or hopes, that you notice and then dismiss. You're supposed to watch each thought come and go, whatever it's about. Take note of them, remain calm, and even if your thoughts wander off, return to thinking about your breathing as an anchor to the here and now, moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness, like me not judging one of my dogs out there having a go. This is probably the little boy over the back there on his trampoline. This is to stop you stressing about stress, and it does appear to help create a positive mindset. Now, the bit that appeals to me is that you can practice mindfulness eating. The instructions being to be aware of the taste, texture and flavour in every bite. There are usually mindfulness resources in most communities, and you can certainly get info on the net, get books on the subject, or go to yoga classes if you're up to it. But thinking of the serious health benefits mentioned in those scholarly treatises, you may fancy either more spiritually based meditation practices, like the guided meditations of spiritualism, for instance, or those connected to the more mystical sides of the main world religions. And of course, prayerful thoughts also reduce your stress factors, so I have found. Anyway, there are lots of videos about meditation, secular and religious, and even prayers on YouTube if you want to find out more. Now, of course, I have some prayers and meditations on YouTube, Lyn's Healing Prayer channel, and Lyn Gibb-de Swarte. And as we move into those golden days of our lives that seem to be such a long way off when Ella Fitzgerald sang about them in September song, there are some stressful occurrences and things that can unsettle us on however much of an even keel we may have ever been. Apart from the obvious ones like aches and pains, dodgy teeth and eyes, problems with our plumbing and the need therefore to be near a bathroom, it's pretty disconcerting to walk into an entertainment venue, whether it's in a public house, restaurant, club or a bit of a social do, realise you're one of the oldest, if not the oldest person there. Not that you're likely to do that on your own, but even if you are invited out by friends or relatives, you can sort of find yourself sitting a bit out of the way perhaps from where the main action's taking place, and it can feel a bit like babysitting duties sometimes, can't it? I went to a birthday bash in a pub a couple of years back and found a quieter part to park myself. Out of the blue, I was singled out to be the butt of an ageist joke by the hired comedian stroke drag artist. I was probably the oldest person there, but hadn't expected to be pointed out and told I looked about 100 over his microphone. As you'd expect, I had to go back, but it still felt bad. However, if you go to a classical concert or the theatre, most of the audience will be teenage to mid-20s and 55 to 75. And of course, if you're older than that, it still makes you feel more comfortable. And what I always say is, if you smile, those lines around your eyes and mouth do the job that left their mark in the first place. So, an instant facelift. And as for de-stressing generally, reading or listening to an audio of a nice story or poem or music that you like can banish the blues. So, until I gather some words together for another chat about what it's like to be older and to have a particular view on life and to have memories that we like to share with others, whether they like it or not, I'll say TTFN, ta-ta for now, toodle pip, bye, bye.